so excited about this topic. I've been trying to get us to do this topic for a while, just because I know for me doing this work, having a connection to the agricultural system, local producers, and growing food on my own campus was the only way we were able to have produce on our campus pantry. It is expensive. I'm sure many of you know this. If you're operating a pantry, it can be one of the most challenging parts. And so really using the environment that we find ourselves in is a really great way to approach this work. So I'm so excited for you all to hear from our panelists. We've got some great experts on hand today. So yeah, just happy National Garden Month. Hope you all are able to get out there. Obviously, it's spring. So it's exciting to see things come up, even though depending on where you are, what region you are, it's maybe just like the very beginning of that. But yeah, just to go over what today's agenda is going to be covering, we're going to do an overview of student agriculture, its impacts, tips and tricks, and then get into panel introductions, go through those questions, and kind of end on what sort of resources we have internally and externally for starting these sort of programming on your own campus. So just as an introductory, I just wanted to lay the foundation of kind of what's happening within the agricultural industry right now. I think all of us in this call can agree that we need food. We need fresh food. But unfortunately, it's becoming increasingly hard for our producers to maintain their land and finances. And that is bound to have massive impacts on both, the industry and as a whole, but also the food system as a whole. And there's obviously lots of complications with the Farm Bill and tariffs and all these other aspects, USDA funding going away, that is just only making it harder. And this has resulted in 142,000 farms and roughly 20 million acres of farmland to be essentially lost to corporate agriculture between the years of 2017 to 2022. So industrial ag is really, changing the way that we see this work. And along with that, the workforce is pretty oriented around people who are between the ages of 50 to 60 right now, meaning that, the producers that are doing most of this work are, cycling towards retirement. And that leaves, a big question of, who is going to continue to do this work in the coming years? How will we continue to secure our food system if we don't have farmers? No farmers, no food. And along with that, there's a completely disproportionate impact. The Young Farmer Coalition found that 59% found that it is incredibly challenging to be involved in farming as a young person. And this is even more so for Indigenous and Black farmers. And so this is obviously the result of policy failure and could easily be rectified through, commodities through the USDA being a little bit more aligned with what people need, farm bills that are more aligned with, the current issues with the food system. And so with that in mind, we need to be supporting students who are interested in doing this work, although it's incredibly challenging to find your way through it. And I think that, college is the best place to start. So how does campus agriculture support student food security? It's pretty clear that produce is pretty expensive right now. You go to the grocery store and things that felt like $30, I feel like I was able to get, a full week's worth of produce for $30 just 2 years ago. And now it's significantly more. And so we're seeing that if that's what we're feeling on the individual level, people that are operating pantries are feeling this on much more of a larger level just because of the sheer amount of food that is needed for sourcing that sort of thing. And along with that, having this sort of programming on campuses provides students with tangible experiences that not only improves their food security while they're on campus, because it provides them with opportunities and knowledge that allows them to grow food for themselves that aligns with their own diets, but it also provides postgraduate food security opportunities as well. So not only do you know how to grow food for yourself while you're in school, but once you leave, entering the world after post-graduation, it's challenging, and having a means that you can support yourself by simply using the land, seeds, and water is bound to create holistic wellness for students across the board. In addition to that, it creates sustainable solutions for food security that have compelling and programmatic benefits. So the biggest thing that we're seeing with schools is that in order to get any sort of food access programming on their campuses, they need to be able to make it compelling to their upper administration. And oftentimes this comes in the form of explaining the sort of like academic, co-curricular, and programmatic benefits that it has. It being an admissions opportunity to really draw attention to the sort of programming. If you're going to a school that is already positioning itself as a green school or carbon neutral school, this is even more compelling for these schools. But all in all, the focus of why we're here today is that students really gain a sense of agency to make decisions about their food system, and all in all, that promotes food sovereignty. And if you were not aware, food sovereignty is described as the right of all people to healthy, culturally appropriate food produced through sustainable and ecological methods. And that's coming from the definition from Soulfire Farms. So moving on, so just to get a very, very base level understanding of what it would look like to implement this sort of programming on your own campus, the first thing that I want to mention is that it's important to use what you have. And so connecting with your campus sustainability directors, student affairs directors, and facility managers is a really great way to learn about campus land usage and what sort of potentials are out there, what has previously been done, and what's possible for the future. Let's say that you are positioned on a campus though that doesn't have access to land, and you run through these options with these administrators, and there's just nothing that comes of it. What we've seen a lot of schools approach is utilizing hydroponics, which is water-based, controlled indoor systems for growing food, which you can actually see here on the right. This is coming from our panelists at NMU, which we'll hear more about later on. And that's a really great way of, growing food indoors, engaging students who are from different co-curricular fields that may not be interested in food, but are interested in, engineering or these other approaches that extend even far beyond food. And lastly, gleaning efforts. So this is something that I don't really see many schools engaging in as much as I certainly think is possible. But gleaning is the practice of partnering with local producers or farmers markets to collect produce that isn't utilized, either because there isn't enough staffing to pick it from the vine, or there's just too much of a surplus at the end of the harvest season, or produce is not pretty enough to go to market. Having these partnerships with producers so that that food isn't just simply thrown out or thrown into the compost, but has a lived human impact, is another great way that we've seen this work happen. And something that I did in college was working with a local apple orchard to collect apples that were used for a plethora of different uses within our dining halls, but also within our pantries. And so these sort of partnerships not only connect you to your local community, connect you to your local environment, but also provide produce that, again, is just really challenging for most schools to come up with. So, with this in mind, we're going to get started and talk to the experts. We have a really great set of panelists here today. First off, we're going to start with Joshua. So, Joshua, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joshua Carter. I'm a graduating senior food science student from Teaneck, New Jersey, and I'm currently attending North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. Yeah, I've been always kind of had like a green thumb growing up with my mom. She had like a garden in her backyard, and then coming to A&T, I really got more involved in food insecurity and really fleshing out my major. So I started working with the pantry on our campus 3 years ago, as a sophomore, 2 years ago. And for working with the pantry, I've now taken over the Plant to Pantry project, which is basically a project where we started a garden at a partnering elementary school within Greensboro, and we have been growing a lot of produce over there and bringing it back to the students at our pantry. And yeah, excited to be here.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And then moving on to Michelle.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle. I will point out the fact that I'm wearing the exact same outfit just by chance today. But I work at Northern Michigan University. I work in athletics, have for last year, but 2 years before that, I was actually an academic advisor on campus. And I started about 3 years ago working with our food pantry. And we have been fortunate to grow our pantry and work with um, a lot of different organizations, both in-house and on campus and in the local community, which has really allowed us an opportunity to grow our pantry and provide a lot more healthy food options for our student staff and faculty that use it. Last year we had about 2,500 visits to our pantry, and the number continues to grow. So, we recognize the importance of it. I'm super passionate about trying to help and continue on like sustainable efforts to make sure that 10 years from now that we're still able to grow quality products for the people that need it here. So thanks for having me, and I look forward to talking to y'all.
Thanks so much, Michelle. And moving on to Madeline.
Hi everyone, my name is Madeline. I am currently a first year graduate student at Michigan University or the University of Michigan, and I work for the campus farm as a ecological farming intern. And my work specifically with the University of Michigan is working on the farm to provide produce for our student farm stand and our maize and blue cupboard, which is our main food pantry on campus. We produce produce all year round, whether that's microgreens and spinach in the winter to everything from tomatoes and squash in the summer to the fall. And my current path of study is agroecology, which blends natural ecosystem services to support output of agricultural systems in a way that restores the land, regenerates water quality, and helps provide a more natural and healthy ecosystem for wildlife and for humans. And I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. We got such a great panelist. And then lastly, but not leastly, we've got Brendan.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brendan Ortiz. I hold two part-time positions that are kind of associated with each other, one at Lorain County Community College and the other at Oberlin College. They are jointly receiving grant funds to pursue food justice funding, and I get to help coordinate both of those projects on either side. Those the same grant, so I just get to swap the day job cap. I was born, or not born in, but I grew up in Oberlin, born in Grafton. Grew up in Oberlin City School District, then went down south about an hour and graduated from the College of Worcester in 2023. I was a student of sustainable food systems, or rather environmental studies of sustainable food systems. Graduated out as with most individuals, started that career search, but then really didn't find that niche of food justice planning until I started working with Lorain County Community College's Sustainable Agriculture program and Oberlin's Food Studies program. Right now, they're tied together with the goal of implementing those goals and themes into the curriculum, as well as engaging into the community. Before then, kind of struggling with that feeling of, well, I'm just gardening, but we're not really addressing the issues of the system. And you might be in like the environmental club in school, and then graduate out, and you have that feeling of wanting to do more until I've been grateful enough to happen upon this platform where I have some of these campus resources to reach out, engage, and help build those productive food spaces.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Brendan. Yeah, so as I said, we've got some great experts here today. It's very clear. And each of these folks are coming from different places, doing different work, and approaching food justice within pantries and farms in different ways. And so I'm really excited to get started and begin this discussion. So for our first question, before we get started, I just want to make sure that everybody who is joining us remotely today knows that if you have any thoughts about the questions that we are prompting the panelists with, feel free to drop it in the chat. We're going to open up the floor at the end for a Q&A. And so if you find yourself having any further questions based on any sort of programmatic functions that our panelists speak about today, feel free to jump in and ask those questions then. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and get started. Our first question being pretty broad, pretty self-explanatory in many ways, but we want to hear what your thoughts are. How can campus agriculture programs support campus food security needs? And I will plug that we've got a picture here from Northern Michigan University's food pantry. And look at that produce. That is amazing. So great to see. We got any thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think for instance, the school I'm at is a big agricultural school. So I definitely think the schools that have these big agricultural programs outside of just like food pantries and food assistance, definitely taking the time to treat the classrooms as like a learning experience, make a research out of it, have students go out and grow food and then just give that back out into the community. Cause I know a lot of classes here at A&T, they grow a lot of produce to learn like what it takes to grow this food and the different steps and process of growing actual like, peppers and fruits and things like that. So definitely just I feel like taking advantage of the classes and opportunity that's already there. And instead of just, doing it to do it or just do it to learn it in class, do it to actually impact the students surrounding you. And then for the colleges or campuses that just don't really have agricultural programs like that, I think there's always, money somewhere that can be found within a lot of colleges to actually put money aside for these programs. And, food deserts and food insecurity exists in every state across the United States and across this country. So I'm sure that there's some students on campus, every campus around, that can get together and create these programs or can reach out to upper faculty to find money to assist in programs like these, because schools love to look good. So what school wouldn't want to assist in helping agricultural programs that will support their campus's food security needs? I mean, that's a great look for them as well as it just being a good thing to do. So um I think that just having faculty be more willing and taking advantage of the resources you already have is just a great way to start.
It's a great point.
I
And
can,
then I want to jump in off of that as well to say, I think like if you're a campus that didn't have a agricultural program and you're taking a beat to stop and say, awesome, we received this funding. How do we implement this? How do we implement it in a way that's actually impactful for our campus and our surrounding community? So you got to think like, what is our campus? Just the campus. I think that's what most people think of, the campus of the institution. But our surrounding environmental campus also has to be considered. And I think when people are asking how we ought to implement these programs or how we ought to improve existing agriculture programs, it kind of forces people to take a beat and examine their current surrounding food systems of the local community. And just to give example, I went to the College of Worcester. Worcester's just about an hour south from Oberlin, a little bit more in the rural counties. And those rural counties are great at producing cash crops. They also have a awesome artisanal and kind of boutique market, but there's lacking a connection in the pipeline, or we don't have the pipeline between the local Amish farmers and market garden farmers to the campus. On campus, we have a bunch of really inspired, environmentally passionate students in Worcester, and similarly for Oberlin, the college and the town. But it's just establishing that connection between what already exists in town and on campus, and then saying, well, maybe we don't need to fully fund and fully reinvent the wheel, but to rather just change our gears and tap into the community and see how the community can support the campus, and then helping hands from the campus can better support that community food economy.
I'll jump in and agree with what you said, Brendan. I would say that creativity and collaboration are the things that have really made the most impact for us on the NMU campus. And obviously, we were fortunate because we were one of the recipients for the Swipe Out Hunger Grant, so we had funding as well. But thinking about there was a lot of different people in different areas on campus that were already trying to do some of these little things. And it's when you can get them all together, that's when the bigger production happens. On the picture that you have there, we have a construction management program on our campus, and they actually built those produce stands for us. And we're fortunate because we have an indoor ag program. So when we bought the freight farms, they did the faculty that is in charge of that program was really excited about service learning and got students excited. And I think when there's connection in being able to provide a service, but knowing that you're helping your peers and you're making a huge impact for people, the investment kind of comes naturally and people are more excited about it. And so we've also, we were able to purchase these two huge greenhouses, and we're fortunate because we have, our environmental sciences program on campus. They have a student organization called the Hoop House, and they literally are excited about growing things. They're excited about making an impact. And so they do all the work, and then they take all that produce, which you're looking at some of it, and they bring it to the pantry. And so I think that, for a lot of people, a lot of these things are happening in small doses around campus. It's getting, like honestly, a lot of the great things that happen were just right place, right time, having the right conversation, and it became this like fruitful thing for us. So I encourage you all, when you're thinking about, how do you do this? It's a tall task for sure. But I would suspect that there's a lot of people that would invest in it, or a lot of people that are already maybe doing some of it, that when you can put a group together, you can really make a massive impact for your students.
Yeah, and I will say our next question, we're definitely going to get into the nitty-gritty of what some of those barriers are, because we all know they're there. We all know that things got to be funded and money is a whole issue in itself. But before we go on to that, is there any other thoughts that we had for this question?
Yeah, I can definitely share my experience. So I went to undergrad at Chatham University, which is a small school in Pittsburgh. And about 30 minutes north, we had a satellite campus that functioned as a farm, but it was all experimental. And we didn't produce enough to really address the food security issues on our campus, except for having some like share bags if there were any extra produce that didn't already go to the volunteers or the farm workers. However, at the University of Michigan, we're a well-funded enough institution where we're really able to collaborate across campus. And one of the things that I really appreciate is that we have a very collaborative crop plan. Every year we invite feedback from students across departments, across campuses, and ask what their cultural needs are for their food security. So we grow different types of squash and zucchini, different types of broccoli. One of my favorite things that we grow is called like gailon, and it's a broccoli that flowers and you actually eat the stem. And so that's something that I've like really appreciated, is because we're able to leverage our resources to really address for the students, because our campus farm is like by students for students. That's kind of our mission. Like we do sell to the dining halls on campus, but our main priority is to make sure that the people who come to our space or the students who come to our university are like represented in the food that we grow.
By students for students. I love that. I'm always going to be for that. And yeah, I mean, there's really intentional ways you can go about this to ensure that you're not just growing food. It's not just like, oh, you're just growing food to grow food. It's like if you're growing food and you already know that there's a food need on the campus, why not connect those forces, close that loop? And obviously, it takes some work, and we're going to talk about that right now. But just hearing, these folks and what they've been able to do despite those barriers, I think is really a testament to the sort of impact that can be forged through this sort of programming. So with that in mind, I am going to move on to our next question, which is, what are some of the biggest barriers to developing a campus agricultural program? Also going to note that we got the Eden Hall Farm here at Chatham in the photo. It's just exciting for me, I think, even just to see, the tangible impact of this sort of work and what's actually possible. So I love a farm visual. So anywho. What are some of the biggest barriers? Because we know they're there, but what have you seen in sort of trying to develop these sort of campus programs?
I would say, I mean, obviously funding is the main one for everybody. But I think that, you know, like a space on campus, particularly finding a space, sometimes visually it might not be what the higher administration wants the campus to look like. So a lot of campuses have, off-site places, but it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, where if you're able to secure a location on or near campus, it's more accessible. You don't have to necessarily worry about travel for the people that are going to be staffing it. And again, that kind of just helps, like you see it, people get excited about it. There's more talk about it. So it really helps kind of carry that conversation far and wide. And that's what really needs to happen if you want people to invest in something. Sometimes we're aware of problems or issues, but if it's not something that we're seeing on a regular basis, it kind of fades away in the distance. And so I would say, infrastructure improvements, even gardening supplies. How do we, the seeds, the wheelbarrows, the stuff that actually makes this work? Just funding becomes the biggest issue, and then space. The space on location, having a uh, you know, permanent spot for that. We were lucky. Our university had actually purchased a long time ago some space that they wanted to build a doormat in the future. It ended up being a little bit too much of a wetland, and so our benefit, and we were able to use some of that space to put our greenhouses, which it's like on our campus, and it's very visible to people, and it's created a lot of positive interaction with both the university community and the local community. So I think again, trying to keep it in front of people is the way to keep that excitement and the ability to fund it growing. We are not funded by our university. We've always been donation based, and thankfully the Swipe Out Hunger grant. And so to keep that momentum, we really need help from people. So they need to be able to see what we're actually working at.
Go ahead,
Yeah, I definitely can echo that. Like personally, I think I've had some of the hardest problems with like admin almost. Like funding was like a problem where it's like, yeah, it's hard to get funding, but I feel like once you get that first grant or that first assistance, you kind of have like the game plan to how to keep being able to get funding or filling out grants. It's kind of not that it's the same questions, but you kind of know what to look for, what you need. But I feel like just the human aspect, having to talk to different people, you never know who's over what, how much time they have, who you have to talk to, and then the connections, trying to get on their schedules. That's definitely at least me personally on my campus, that's been one of the struggles we've had, and in ways where it's like we've been able to make the connection, but then it's just falling out, either because of like the student connection we had graduated, or because of just the admin. I guess they just got too busy and they put us on like the bottom of their priority chart. But I definitely feel like that as well. And then another issue I kind of bring in, which I've kind of felt like I've seen my last 2 years here at A&T, is definitely just like student like commitment, and not in the way where it's like you can't get people out to actually help out, but in the way where it's like, are you actually helping or assisting in this program because you want to do it, or you just because it looks good, you just want to say that you helped out. And it's kind of like the performative thing a lot of people say nowadays, but I feel like I have seen a lot more people of doing service to like be seen doing it, and not just doing the service, to do it and actually like feel good and apply it in your future. And so I would say one thing is finding like genuine people who actually want to believe in the program you're doing and actually like have it around and assist in keeping up to actually help other people, rather than kind of like helping themselves and making themselves look better in a bigger light or anything like that.
Yeah, I want to jump in and say I agree with all of that. Those are great points. I chuckled at the performative gardening because I do think that's true. I think you could in certain environments strategize on that if you are in a position to make assignments or integrate themes of food justice into your own classroom curricula workshop, so like on campus, or right, engage in those community workshops from a campus seat if you're able to put that together, if you're able to host an Oberlin College or Learning Kind of Community College skills building workshop hosted on campus or by the campus off campus, and inviting whoever shows up. There's always going to be those who show up just for the little Instagram flick. There are always those who show up for first couple months raring to go of garden season. And just like with New Year's in the gym, people kind of taper off, we get busy. But if you can get people inspired from even just that first workshop, where maybe they're showing up to perform the garden and then they see their first seed sprout, they see the pole bean, they see the sunflower in the front yard, often just getting people to plant that first seed is very difficult. And then hopefully they'll show back up. And if not, you at least had that volunteer day where 15 people showed up for that group community seeding event. I do want to just reiterate, funding is a big thing. Of course, funding will come and funding will go. Though it's important to strategically use the time while you have that funding, maybe even to fund your own position, to seek out and apply for more funding. Right? We're talking about sustainable farming, sustainable agriculture, and regenerative agriculture. We ought to be in positions where we're able to regenerate or just seek out existing grant funds. So if you have a team off of the food justice grant that may last a couple of years, it always ought to be in the back of your mind, clicking and ticking that we need to keep in mind that this will not last forever. And even if it's just to fund next year's seed order, right? How can we become self-sustainable? How can we become sovereign or autonomous over our own inputs? Is it applying for and seeking out another grant that may be available and just around the corner? Or can we seed save? How do we take what we have here, whether it be passion from students, whether it be skill sets, turning those students who learned into teachers that could teach a workshop again next season, or even just keeping your inputs such as, seed saving, so you don't have to purchase that again and you're completely turning over into that or transitioning away from, right, an input heavy environment to input producing environment. And you can really regenerate that whole very inspiring, again, environment. And then placing that into campus context, you would ideally have it staggered to where your graduating students are training the undergrad students. They age up, they're about to graduate, can rank and file, gain experience, credit opportunities. And then ideally, like if you as a program or an institution can link that directly to a jobs in general, but directly to specific industries. You have students geared towards mindset and skill wise, more towards landscaping, that's fine, or more towards horticulture, more towards food policy or food production. You're going to have individuals who have their different interests, but if we could train them up in a way that's actively maintaining the campus, and then through the graduation, immediately place them in positions that could then turn around and recontribute to just a larger overall food economy in the local area. That's what we need. It's all good and well if we can maintain food security on campus, but if the surrounding area and grocery stores are still just Walmart and Meijer, then we're not actually fixing the larger food distribution at hand. But I'll go from there.
That's a great point. It absolutely is. Just for the sake of community knowledge, do you want to share like a brief explanation of what seed saving is?
Yeah, so every plant, seed saving is very cool, is what it is. Every plant has its own development and maturity cycle. We could use sunflowers because they grow quick, big, and easy. They're cheap, so you can go home today or go to the store today, come home and plant them just on your kitchen windowsill. Get a little Dixie cup, go get some soil from outside, pay for it if you want to, just make sure it's clean, fill it up, stick your seed in there. That seed will germinate. It will begin to push its shell off as it's absorbing the nutrients and the water. It's going to stretch into its first morning yawn and say, I am a plant now. And it's going to go through a couple different phases the next couple of days of maturing into its true leaves. And if you're growing tomatoes or peppers, that'll be from the kind of seed bud stage where it's just a little closed leaflet. Forgive me, I don't know the term for that one, but then it'll grow into its two true leaves where you can say, I now see that as a tomato plant. I can now identify or recognize that as maybe a maple tree, an elm tree, a pepper plant, where you can actually begin to see this is what I'm growing. That will continue to develop, mature. That same plant just gets more leaves, gets bigger until you have its flower, which needs to be pollinated, to then turn into, say it's a tomato, it will grow from that flower into your fruited body, right? That's why there's the argument that, I feel like I have, I'm gonna move a little bit around here. I feel like I have some seeds. That's why there's the argument between whether tomato is a fruit or a vegetable. It's a vegetable in culinary terms, but it is the fruited body of your plant. And every plant has the fruited body, whether it be a fruit you could eat, a vegetable that you call a vegetable, or maybe even going directly to seed. Using the sunflower as example still, right? A transition between tomato and sunflower. It's grown now. It has its flower that is pollinated. This does not have a fruited body. It's just going to go straight to flower. Behind these, the zoom background's kind of blurring it, but behind the flower petalets, you have the seeds that are a food source, right? So we could save the stalks to preserve our larger food environment for natural animals, but then we cut the heads, save the head itself, let these seeds dry out. You want to let the heads dry out on the stalk first, then replant the seed. And just in this head, I probably have 150 seeds. I could have 150 new sunflowers, 150 new sunflowers that will produce 150 more seeds. I could go and toast and salt and eat these sunflower seeds like you get from the store. And then I've reproduced, right, one bag of seeds. Or I could save this, plant another field, and then I reproduce my ability to do that in the future. So seed saving, growing any plant to the point of maturity where it either grows the fruited body or directly into flower, then seed. And you might ask, well, where do I get my seed from the tomato? It's in the tomato. So you take that fruited body, you smush it on a paper towel, let those guts dry out, and you can scrape them off. You can use a dehydrator, but to intentionally save and then reserve your saved seeds for the appropriate season. So saving over year, over winter, and then cultivating your own ability to reproduce that plant and any byproduct from that. If you're growing buckwheat, you can grow buckwheat for cover crops, or crush the seed, and then you've come into the means of your own buckwheat flour production.
See, I knew that you would be the perfect person to ask about this. That was, see, you get the farm educators on the call, and suddenly you have a great understanding of seed saving. And the reason that I asked for that is because I really want to draw the point that this doesn't have to be incredibly expensive. You don't have to spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on seeds, because even what Madeline put in the chat is that there are seed libraries all across the country. There are so many organizations that are working to preserve seeds, both as a food sovereignty project of ensuring that, foods are able to be passed down generation to generation, and not, just like agribusiness determining what foods we can eat, but also to ensure that folks who want to grow food and don't want to break the bank while doing so can do that. So I would definitely urge you to take a look and see if you have any sort of seed banks in your area, because this can be a great way to kind of address that sort of cost issue. So we've talked about cost. We've talked about administrative barriers, the sort of like aesthetic concerns that we see. Is there any sort of challenges that we've seen with staffing, volunteer cultivation? I know we talked about that for a little bit, but were there any thoughts on that front before we go ahead and move on to the next question?
I'll jump in again. Like with our food pantry, it has been it was started by a student organization. And then as those people graduated, which we've kind of talked about the graduation effect, it got passed under our Dean of Students office. And then it was under a couple advisors, and then they left. And then so it just kept getting passed on. And that's why it remained so stagnant. And we have a task force now that it involves about 5 full-time staff members that we just volunteer and help out. And then we have student volunteers that run it. So to keep people invested in it is a difficult task. And unfortunately, with turnover sometimes at universities, these are the things that end up falling a little bit flat because it's not maybe seen as a priority when it really is a priority. They did a survey here, the most recent survey we did, about 30% of our students said that they, have food insecurity and aren't sure where their next meal comes from. So if that's not compelling enough to think of how can we address these things, I don't know what is. And so, but you have to have people that are going to keep showing up day in and day out. And when that transitional thing happens, it just falls flat. So if you're able to fund a position, if you're able to have volunteers that are really going to stick it out through the good, the bad, the ugly, I think that is what is crucial to keep these things moving in the right direction and continuing to grow. We started literally as a tiny bookcase in a closet. And if you could see what we've evolved into, it's really a lot of hard work from people that have invested and aren't willing to turn away from it. So yeah, it is. I think staffing becomes, and then just staffing, like having students that are interested in, joining these clubs that grow this food and continue to show up for that. Obviously, otherwise we're going to have a big pile of weeds out there, and that's where that aesthetic thing comes back into play. So I think that's just, to have people who really care, who are excited, and who can see the value is just the difference maker. And I can assure you that on any campus, you've got those people. I think, I can't emphasize enough just the creativity of finding the pockets that exist and then the collaboration. So many things happen by just a chance meeting or a chance conversation. And so, we talk about our pantry every chance we get. I'm happy to do it because you just never know when somebody wants to jump in and help, or somebody's like, oh, I have this resource that, I'd love to donate for you guys. And so continuing to establish those collaborations, connections, and conversations like across your campus and communities, I think it's just the only way I think to make it, progress.
Mm-hmm. Communal partnerships are like the only way, is what I've seen. Obviously, there are grant sources, there's funding sources, but if you don't have community connectivity, if you're not being informed by your community, if you're not being supported by your community, if people with lived experience are not at the center of it, it really, it's not going to have the impact that you seek for it to have. And then it is just gardening. But you can turn that to gardening with impact. We are chatting a lot. So I am going to have to move on to the next question because I think that we're kind of getting to the crux of what this question is, which is how does agricultural programming serve as a mechanism for food sovereignty for students? So again, food sovereignty being that every person should have the right to healthy, culturally appropriate foods. How is this, involving students in this process a means of securing that for themselves, both within the school, but also postgraduately?
I can kick us off here. I think that one of the most powerful mechanisms of agricultural programming on college campuses is that it provides a whole new palette of how to engage with the world. You start seeing connections through your food that maybe you had never thought of before, that had never been part of your life experience before then. Growing your own food gives you insight on the labor, the cultural and institutional knowledge that you need to be successful, and just like overall like skills that empower your own self. I started my food growing experience right at the start of COVID. And if I wasn't a part of that gardening community, I would have felt so much more isolated and so much less empowered to be able to create community, see how my impact on my college campus in a positive lens. And so I think that it's such a springboard for so much like future action and knowledge and like initiative to learn that it really can't be like quantified. It has so much more intrinsic value than just like credits for your degree or like volunteering hours. It's just something that can be so personally and even like spiritually empowering.
Absolutely. I didn't know anything about vegetables before I went to college. Like the little that I did know, oh, Brendan, you're beating me. It's at the end. Let me get to it. I'll get to it. It's so funny, though. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Yes, definitely check out the Gen Z Food and Hunger Summit. Oh, you didn't have to delete it. We'll get to it, though. I think that there's so many opportunities for folks to explore this more. And that's why I was so excited to talk about this, because my relationship with food entirely changed when I went to college and started to learn how to grow my own food. And the things that I, would have turned a blind eye to, or just would have been like, that's not for me. That's, that's for bougie people. Kale, I've never thought that I'd eat kale. I'm like, well, that's for like rich people. And that is something that has to be deconstructed. And the fact that, this is the sort of mind frame that that poor people are being given, low income people are being given, is limiting health outcomes. And I really truly believe that if we want to talk about food sovereignty, having agency over your own health, over the food that enters your own body and how it is grown, like that's like the epitome of agency. I can't think of anything else that's more dignified. So yeah. Any other thoughts? Because I'm gonna go on a spiel. Go ahead, Brendan.
Yeah, I do have that. I agree with a lot of what was said. Kind of to the point where like once you realize how fun and impactful gardening and urban farming and regenerative farming specifically with those themes is, then you can't really go back. You can take a class initially just for credits. You could show up just for that performative gardening, but in that workshop and in that class, if and we as educators, this is what we ought to convey. But once you come across a theme of, oh, this is larger than just gardening. This has to do with policy and politics of who has control of our systems, who's making these policy changes, who is facing the results and the conditions of these policy changes. Are those in, say, Congress working on the Farm Bill living in our communities? They may represent them, but are they actually from and doing these same or this same job of advocating on the street, on the ground, and from the gardens? A lot of this is approached, and this being like discussions on the Farm Bill and just policy around food distribution in general, is approached in regard or from the perspective of like industrial agriculture, conventional ag, and profit forward food economies. If we just had food forward economy, your goal is to make food. As in a profit forward economy, your goal is to make profit to then either invest or to then go buy food. We could just skip that step and just grow food. And once we do, or in order to grow food, right, you need to acquire that land to have a tree planting workshop. You get that permission and you plant those trees. But once we do that, we've already established a green space. We may plant 8 apple trees right over here at the South Lorraine Library, is featured in that photo, that you can go back and visit. So then there's, again, a step removed for anybody else in the future that wants to go have a apple education workshop or go read underneath the trees and just kind of find out more about nutrition in their own regard. Say, I can do this because this was done before. It's a little difficult maintaining staffing, especially on campus if students are graduating out, but it's a lot easier to tell a kid to go over there and say, hey, check that out, when there's a garden already established, when the trees are already planted, because that's creating permanent green infrastructure for cities. And then those social green spaces where ideally we're producing food, but people can come gather and figure out what they want to do next and what they need to do next. Even just adding a swing set on a campus. It's not a garden, but something in those third spaces that allow people to bring together to realize, oh, maybe we are coming a little bit more into our own sovereignty. I didn't know that until I met and shook hands with this other farm coordinator just on the other side of town. So we always have to stay in tune with what's happening and then recognize what's happened and then go back to those green infrastructural spots that have been and can be established.
I'm going to piggyback on that. And I don't quote me on the data, but I believe that somewhere around like 80% of the energy used in food systems is like transportation, like the long miles that they're traveling all this food. So when you're able to grow it on your campus and it's basically like 0 food miles travels, it has less, pesticides, it has more nutrient value to it. And, so talking about a couple other things really quick, because I know we're running out of time, but like as you're growing this food and you have hopefully a student organization that's like invested in it, they've done, like on our campus, we've done canning workshops. They've showed people how to make salsa so they can do this like long-term, different cooking demos to give them literally lifelong skills. So they get excited about growing it. They know what to do with it. And, it changes your whole view of how you use herbs and spices and vegetables. So I just think being able to, go and pick something and eat it, you're not going to get anything more nutrient and fresh than that. And it's so much more cost effective. So it's just an incredible opportunity when you can do it in-house.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we are kind of starting to wrap up here. So if any of you are on here and have any specific questions about what sort of programmatic approaches, our panelists have talked about here today, please do enter that in the chat. And if you have any thoughts about this question as well, please do make it known. I definitely think that what's really important about all this is, a conversation that we hear with our partners often is like, how do we create a dignified food process? And, going to pantries is hard. And for many, there's a lot of stigma that's attached, but there's no stigma attached to going to the farm and picking some food and eating it. I mean, maybe it's dirty. Maybe there's stigma there. I think that a little bit of dirt on the produce is not too bad, but I definitely think that being involved in something that feels bigger than yourself and it feels, it really connects you to the environment in an age where, opportunities to connect to the environment are kind of slim, depending on where you are in the country. Having that opportunity is it's not even just about being a student, but just like connects to your whole being. And the same is true for students. Look at all the work. I am so excited to hear about these workshops. I mean, opportunities for students to really not only get their hands on opportunity, but to learn more about what's possible, how they can, approach affordability within their groceries, how preserving and canning and all these things. It's a great opportunity. And unfortunately, I really think that it should be broader knowledge. And so, if your school is really focusing on, what is the academic benefit of this, that is an approach that I've seen work really well, is saying, by providing these sort of like food education programs, we're making a more well-rounded student. And it's unfortunate that you have to take that sort of narrative, but it's one that I've seen that has worked. So love to hear that, though. Sourdough starter is awesome. So cheap. And yeah, these are skills that people can use once they leave school. I mean, half of the recipes that I make now as an adult are recipes that I learned when I was in college. And I think that that's, really important to know, is that this moment, being in higher education has long-term effects on the success of the student. So really what they learn while they're there is going to indicate much in the future. All right, I'm not seeing any questions, but I'm going to let you all have a few more minutes. Yeah, go ahead, Madeline.
Yeah, I just have a comment specifically about like approaching your administration. Your administration is only there because of you. If you were not a part of that school, your administration would not have like their job, essentially. So definitely leverage your position as a student. It is their job to make sure that your student experience is of quality. And so if they're, denying you the resources, the access to improving your quality of life on campus, then that is the time to organize against them. And it is almost always like, as soon as they just hear like the whispers of, something that is like involving like a campus protest or a boycott or, just like a petition, they're almost always ready then to like come back and meet at the table to rediscuss and figure out a way to make things work. So just like utilizing your student power is like a great way to get the things that you want to see on your campus there.
Yeah. I mean, it's schools are very invested in their image. And I mean, if they don't have positive image, then they don't have funding. I heard something the other day at the student summit that we had for our SWIPE students. I don't remember who said it, but somebody said something to the effect of schools cannot exist without students. And that like is so clear and obvious, but yet hearing that was so important for me because, you can, express that certain things are needed because at the end of the day, they need you. And I think that again, if you are making this more of an issue of their image, if you, really use the sort of language that they, are invested in, like retention, student retention is a huge thing that higher education is concerned about across the board. If you make mention of things around, what other schools are offering, if there is a competing school that has a great agricultural program, that's a great opportunity to be like, hey, students are choosing this school over us. And, students who are interested in this specific thing are choosing this. Maybe we need to be mirroring the sort of things that they're doing too. And just, using, language like being a leader, I think a lot of schools want to be a co-curricular leader. They want to be a leader in different academic approaches. And if you can make the claim that in them doing this sort of work, they are leading, they're being thought leaders, they're, being food access leaders. There's a lot more potential there, rather than it. Unfortunately, just saying this is a food justice issue and we should all be able to be fed is oftentimes not enough. And so really, trying to express what the broader impacts are that they're maybe more invested in, oftentimes it's a little bit more successful. So yeah, I'm really so thankful for all of your insights that you've all provided here today. I wish we could keep talking, quite frankly. Maybe we'll have to do a part 2. But if you do have any questions that you are still left with, feel free to drop that in the chat. For the time being, I'm just going to go over a couple opportunities. So this is where Brendan beat me to the punch. The Gen Z Food and Hunger Summit is coming up this summer. I'm an alum of the Congressional Hunger Center. Their programming was really informative for me in starting my work in this field in general. I am always going to be one to kind of encourage students to do this sort of work. So definitely check that out. Their applications are still open. Similarly, the National Young Farmers Coalition Fellowship, it's called the Root and Bloom Fellowship. This is a really great opportunity for BIPOC students, particularly to be connected to funding opportunities, mentorship, professional development. So definitely check that out. It seems like a really great program and they're a great organization. And then lastly, the Northeast Student Farm and Food Conference is happening at Bard College this year. I attended this like 3 years ago, and it was really what launched me towards approaching a partnership with the pantry and my campus farm. I didn't really know it was possible until seeing another student present on it. And so there's definitely a lot of really important thought curation that's happening at that conference. So I would definitely recommend that. So if if this sparked your interest today and you want to learn more and you don't know where to go, I would definitely check that out. And then just for network updates to our grantees, we're going to be sending out a grant reporting template later this week, so be on the lookout for that. And if you're a prospective grantee, if you're interested in after hearing what NMU was able to do with their grant fund, which you can check out over here on the right, definitely be on the lookout as well, because we're going to be sending out our campus leader survey, which is the prerequisite for our next round of funding. If you have any sort of questions about that, you can go ahead and book a meeting here with me using this QR code that's on the left, or email us at programs@swipehunger.org. After we're done here, I'm going to send you all a wrap-up email with the recording, but also the contact information of our panelists here today. If you find that you want to hear more about specific programs that they did and kind of just pull from their thoughts, definitely do that. But all in all, I just want to thank our panelists for all of the work that you're doing on your individual campuses, all the work that you have done for your food systems locally, but also for sharing your knowledge to our network. I know that there's certainly so much that I learned here today, and I hope the same is felt for everyone who was able to attend. Just checking to see. Brendan's got some great information here on the right. Great. Well, if you do have any questions, please let me know. I can always get you connected to any of these folks. But yes, please be in touch and be on the lookout for those emails coming in by the end of the week. All right, folks.
Thank you for coordinating this, London. And just like as another point, it's not often that all farm coordinators or folks in these ENVS positions do have a platform like this to kind of speak to the public or to each other, because we're either on the laptop or in the field. So then now this is a moment of networking for us and for anybody kind of coming into their own academic or career path. That's all networking is, just connect through conversation.
Yes.
But just chatting, you always learn a lot and you're always able to kind of relay a lot. And then you got 5 more connections in an hour.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
I just want to thank you for putting us all together the same.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think that that's a lot of what we were hearing, a lot of the, common threads that we're hearing from people's responses is get the communities connected, and it's amazing what can happen. So I'm so glad we were able to get all of these experts in the same place and chat more like this. All right. Absolutely. Thank you all so much for being here, and yeah, stay connected. Let us know if you have any questions.